Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webcast, Innovative and Easy Ways to Transform Your People with Upskilling and Reskilling, sponsored by Infopro Learning. This webcast has been pre-approved for HRCI and SHRM credit. Please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credits. You will receive an email from hr.com within 2 business days. It will include the certification credit information. You may also log into your account and view the credits that you have received. If you have any questions during the webcast, click on Q&A in your webinar controls and type them in. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to our presenter, Nolan Hout.
Thanks, Kathy, and thanks everyone at hr.com for putting on great events like these. If this is your first one, I highly encourage you to go check out others. Their content is really extraordinary, and they're great people to work with as well. So if you're going to give your business to anyone, hr.com is a good place to give your business to. Please do check them out. And again, thanks for joining. I don't know where everybody is located in the world. I'm joining from a town called Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. We are in the middle of a snow squall, which is an interesting type of heavy snow with heavy wind. So very fun times here in the Northwest area. Depending on where you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Again, thank you for joining the podcast on innovative and easy ways to transform your people with upskilling and reskilling. It is going to be hard for me to monitor the chat. The Q&A is the best way. If you have a question, I really encourage you to utilize the Q&A. I'll be checking those periodically through the webinar. Well, I see we're starting to settle in on the participant count, so we'll go ahead and get started out of respect for those that were able to join right on time. And I do know that sometimes it's hard to get from one meeting to the next and bounce around from platform to platform. So thank you, all of you, for joining. A little bit about Infopro Learning. We've been in business for over 30 years now with our mission of unlocking potential of your people. This could be your employees, your clients, or your partners, for that matter. And we make 3 promises to all of our clients: that we will develop meaningful learning experiences that are not just checking the box, but they will create a measurable performance impact on your business, not just on your people. And we will do so with sustainable operational excellence, which is the key term these days. An easier way to say that is we'll save you money or get things done faster. It's a $10 word for a 2-cent idea. And with that, a little bit about me. My name is Nolan Hout, as Kathy introduced me. Been in this space for over a decade now, and been at Infopro Learning for 13 years. You can reach out to me on my email. I'm also fairly active on LinkedIn, where I host a podcast and various other things. So feel free to check me out there. I love baseball. This is the closest baseball team to me in Seattle. In the summer times, my absolute favorite place to be. One of my favorite places to be, I should say. The second favorite place is hiking. Also in Seattle, just oddly enough, this is one of my favorite hikes of all time. This is Mount Rainier National Park. Please do go visit that if you ever have the opportunity. It is one of the most beautiful places you can ever experience. I have a little dog named Vandal. He's as smug and pretentious as he looks in this picture. And that's me. Probably my absolute, I know I've said my favorite like 3 different times, but my favorite thing to do is fly fishing on any river, any stream. If you have any great places to fish, feel free to throw that in an email over to me. I'd gladly come check it out. And here's my gorgeous family. My wife has been fairly adamant about never showing pictures of our kids or her for some reason. I'm not exactly sure. So this is my fun way of saying, yes, I do have a family, but I'm not allowed to show their pictures for whatever reason. I want to get some definitions out of the way. Anytime we talk about upskilling and reskilling, I know there's always, some debate, right? I don't know why. I think in learning and development and in HR, we're always kind of arguing over acronyms or things that maybe don't necessarily really matter. Is it WBT or is it e-learning? Is it e-learning? Is it lower E, big L? But for the purpose of today, upskilling we're going to be talking about is focusing on developing new skills for the same role. Somebody's in marketing, we're going to make them do something else in marketing. A little bit of an incremental gain there. Reskilling is focusing on preparing employees for a completely new job, something that maybe would be a sidestep from where they currently were in their career. So why do we care? Obviously, you care enough to be on this call about upskilling or reskilling or this webinar because you were going to invest 50-ish minutes of your time. So the employees care, obviously. We know this. Gallup has said 50% would switch jobs just to be reskilled. So people are looking for it. And I mean, really, this is the most important stat because this is telling you that when it comes to reskilling, people are wanting to be reskilled and they also recognize that they need to be reskilled. And the vast majority would stay in their job if they invested in their careers, blah, blah, blah. Now, so that's the employee. They care. Now, the employer, the person who's spending the money, well, why do they care? A couple of very important stats. So by 2030, Dell did a survey and figured out that 85% of the jobs won't exist in 8 years, 7 years. And maybe more alarming is 1 out of 2 employees will require significant upskilling within a year, cites the World Economic Forum. And World Economic Forum also did a survey that said, I think in 4 years, it used to be every 5 years, skills had a half-life. Now it's every 4 years. So upskilling, reskilling is really important. The pace of change is so fast right now. It really has set the table for educating people and pushing their skills forward as one of the biggest investments that an organization can make. So big question, is upskilling and reskilling the same thing that we're doing today? Is this just another word that we've decided to use that sounds better, for whatever reason? I don't know. I say, the small answer, upskilling, is upskilling the same that we're doing today? I say kind of, yeah, I think so. For the most part, a lot of us, when we're looking at our roles in the organization, we're trying to move the needle on employees to make them incrementally better at their job, making their skills a little bit better, moving up the level of talent. Reskilling, I would say, most of us in learning and development in HR, we're really not, we have not, again, painting a broad brush here, focused a ton on reskilling our people, on saying, maybe this person isn't really good for this role, but I bet we could educate them on this other role in IT or this other role in wherever it should be. So going meta with it, focusing on upskilling and reskilling is just an upskilling of L&D. It's not a reskilling. When you look at upskilling, we're not saying let's do something wildly different than what we've already done. But what it does do is it positions learning and development to be the largest competitive advantage of a company. I think no more time than today have we really looked at learning and development and developing our people as the largest competitive advantage. We've already learned that the half-life of skills are shrinking. Most people are going to be needing new jobs even by the end of the year, or new skills by the end of the year. So it's really, now is the time for us to look at our business a little bit of a different way and understand our role in this ecosystem of talent, which is becoming the most important piece of any company. So how do we do it? What's the payoff? So, today we're going to talk about some innovative and some easy ways to do it. I'm going to talk a little bit about both. Now, some of them you might think, well, that's not that easy, is it? Or maybe that's not that innovative, or maybe in your mind, innovation means technology. I promise we're going to talk a little bit about everything in this webinar today. So I hope there's something in it for everyone. So I think the most important thing for us to do when we look at upskilling and reskilling, we have to understand and define what skill is. Now, this is different. This is not necessarily something that we have done a very good job of in the past. First, we have to understand what we currently have, starting with processes. Now, I'm not saying you need to know every single thing that I don't know, a salesperson does, or a nurse does, or a doctor does. You don't need to know everything, but you need to have an overall understanding of your business, of the processes that drive those businesses. most everything, the rule of 80-20 applies. 80% of a business is doing the same 20% of things again and again and again and again. Understand those processes that, those 20% of the processes that drive 80% of your business. If you can understand those, you're going to be in a good spot. Same with technology. Again, most of us have a fairly good grasp of the technology that lives within our own ecosystem, our LMS, or authoring tools, whatever it should be, LXPs. But how well do we understand the technology that other departments are using and how fast that technology is changing? And then our people as well, understanding what type of people does our company employ from a skill perspective. What type of skill are these people to do? Are they high skilled? Are they low skilled? Is it a skill that is easily transferable, or is it a skill that is highly specialized? Having a high level overview of what you have is really important. And then you need to look at, where are we trying to improve the most today? Now, most people say, you can do things faster, you can do things better, or you can do things cheaper, right? Better, faster, cheaper. You hear that all the time. And you can't choose three. Usually you can only choose two. Having a good idea of what your business is trying to do, whether you're a tried and true business model, and right? Southwest has historically been a cost and a value play. Cost and a speed play. Walmart, kind of same thing. But other ones like Nordstrom is driving on value. That's their core driver. And knowing a little bit about your business, not just your business as a culture, but also talking to other business managers, reading your CEO's 10K, their financial reports when they push those out, the first page or summary or so that the CEO, he or she, puts out, is a very good identifier of where your business is trying to improve. I really encourage you to all go out and look at that. And the most important part of this, so now we have our skills, we know what is most important about our company to apply those skills. Now we need to know where do we need to be in 5 years, what will be needed in 5 years, right? We mentioned in Dell in 7 years, most of our skills are going to be obsolete, or 50% of the jobs or whatever it was are going to be obsolete. This isn't trying to look into a crystal ball and say what new is going to be invented, because in 5 years, the way that corporations are set up, it's going to take more than 5 years for something to be a real sea change for the most part. Again, that vast majority of the times that's the case. So it's looking at innovations that are here today and just kind of projecting out, what are we already seeing? Going to the heads of department, what are you seeing in your business? This is very prevalent for us right now. In fact, just last week, so we have a person in our marketing team whose job it is to write our internal newsletter. This goes out to all of our employees. Now, this is kind of a big task. It revolves going to all the different business heads and asking them for an update, and then they bring that in, and then this person has to rewrite it so it's in a single voice, and check with it and check with the CEO, and it's kind of a big thing that we invest in. Well, this month, by direction of our CEO, we wanted to use AI chat and see if that would help us out. So we took the text from the different business heads, we threw that into the artificial intelligence, and we said, rewrite this in a single voice. And then the person looked at that, made 1 or 2 changes, put a title on it, and then sent out the email, almost as is, with very little changes. That's not to say that I need to now go and fire that person whose job it was to actually do all of that work. What it means is the person whose job used to be to rewriting that, used to have to rewrite everything. Their job now is to more ensure that they're communicating with others to get that feedback in the right manner, and to actually think what is going to make people more engaged versus just let's make sure it's in a single voice. So again, there's things that we're seeing today that will be good pinpoints to understand where is the map. And I always say, you can't go out when you start upskilling and reskilling, you need to think internally, do I have a direction? Do I have a destination on a map that I'm trying to get to? Or am I just on a wondrous journey? You need to have that map. So the big lesson here, don't build silos. So much of us, when it comes to doing all of this work, what do you have, Bubba? We like to do it within our own teams or within our own. You got to go out there and talk to people because you understand your world very well, and those other people understand their world very well. Go and speak to them and ask them, what skills do you think you're going to need 5 years from now? It's an amazing conversation. It's a wonderful way to get insight into business. What processes drive 80% of your work today? What customers give us 80% of our, what are the 20% of customers that give us 80%? What are they buying? What is the number one complaint that we get in our call center department? What is the number one job of our CFO? These kinds of things you can go out there and you can get. Do not do this in a silo. You're doing yourself a disservice. This is the real, in my opinion, the upskilling that L&D will have to do uh, for the next several years, is to not build these silos. If their job is really to go out and take the level of skill in the company and raise it up, they could not be expected to know what a good marketer is or what a good financial person is or what a good ops person is. Just do not build yourselves into silos. So the second point here, I say learn more about the learner. So you have a point on the map. You know what skills are. You have in your idea, okay, and again, maybe this is a little bit of a caveat on the back one. Learner surveys are not necessarily the best way to understand what skills people have or what skills people need, right? So don't think that, oh, I do an annual survey, so I'm good. It's not that. And I mentioned that because here we talk about surveying as well. But you want to learn more about the learner. And then what I say is always start with understanding who wants to learn the most. Now, I know a lot of us do surveys for our learners and understand what types of information they want to get. What I'm asking is, instead of just asking that, you obviously should ask that, but you should also understand which groups within the organization have the most aptitude to learn. This isn't just necessarily a survey of people, right? You can survey people, but you need to also analyze the survey results with your own results. Who within your team consumes the most training? Which department has the most? Is there any type of correlation there? Who is self-selecting themselves and to say, I need reskilled? What jobs are most apt for reskill? What jobs are most apt for upskill? When you survey people, understand where do they want to be upskilled. Now, I say reskill is low-hanging fruit because most people do, again, as on the very first slide, I think it was 1 out of 2 people will switch a job just to be reskilled. It's not that they don't know that they need to be reskilled. They would love to be reskilled. Understanding who those people are and getting people to self-select and raise their hand before you push somebody into a program is really important. This helps you build out lists of saying, I know that when I launch this training, I'm going to give it to everybody. I'm going to give it to every, I don't know, IT person. But let me make sure that these people who said they actually wanted it are included in that. 2, define what you can spend on learners. Now, I know this is a bit of a tricky one, especially coming into this next year where many of us have already set our budgets. But I always say, a nice way to maybe get around that is to talk with the managers of your business departments, break out of your silos and go to them and ask, how much money do you want to be spending on these people? What is it? And it's not necessarily how much you want to spend, but another way to ask them is, how much does it cost you if we don't? If we don't reskill people, if we're not able to retain this talent in the company, what does it cost you to go out there and get a new employee? Because then you can start looking at estimating the return on investment of that spend. I say some foreshadowing here. I just call it out so that it's not hidden. It is mostly, I will talk about, I will give an example at the very end. I will give an example of how to build out the ROI of, in this case, it's a reskill ROI. But then the third one is track ROI. And at the end of the day, what you're wanting to do, again, we're all in this world, and most of our businesses here live to make money, and to be able to show ROI at the end of the day to the manager. Going back, you gave me $100,000 last year to invest in your people. And this is how I was able to make an impact. That's now your new best friend. And that becomes the center of your upskill and your reskill. And another good way is to not just talk about managers about what they want to spend on learners, but what they're willing to spend on talent. If we take a look at high demand jobs, let's take a look at IT as an example. There's certain programming languages and certain technologies that are so new that there's not a lot of highly skilled people out there on the market. And more than likely within their own team, they might have some people that are doing jobs that will be replaced relatively soon. You can ask them, what does it cost you to go out and find a resource like this? And use that money to say, okay, well, give me half of that. Right now, you're going to spend $300,000 just in recruitment, hiring costs to go out and find 50 new engineers. Give me $100,000 and let me see if I can reskill some people from other departments to come join your team. That's a positive ROI of $200,000. And the last point here I have is enroll learners. Now, we've gone this full arc, I feel like, in learning, where so much of it used to be very personal, very one-on-one, and then we have technology, we have learning management systems, we have a strive to do things more efficiently, and so everything has become automated. When we launch our course, we send out an alert goes through your LMS probably, that sends out to all of your learners saying this course has just been launched, go and take it. But I would encourage you within the learning development department, this is a huge benefit. And I've heard now from 2 different chief learning officers in recent podcast episodes that have talked about this, of whenever you launch a new learning or training program or initiative, going out there and talking with the people who you want to take the program, actually, on the phone, chat, MS Teams, whatever it is, on this survey, again, going back to your list, on this survey, you mentioned that you would have an interest in learning this new skill. We just launched this program. I wanted to make sure that you saw it. Talk to these people. It is worth the 15-minute conversation to enroll the learner in that program. I mean, if you look at it, if you lose an employee, easily it's going to cost your organization $20,000 to lose that employee between the opportunity costs, hiring the new person, whatever it is. It is worth a 15-minute phone call to talk to that person and let them know the training program exists. And the second one, I say email them. And again, I know this can be difficult with internal communications and rules of who can do what within the company. But if you have the ability, I really recommend email marketing is still relevant. It still is impactful. Please, do not rely on your learning management system to send out an automated message. Do not rely on your internal Slack channel or whatever intranet that you use, SharePoint, what have you. Do not rely on that to get the message out. People live in their inbox. That is where they live. They live in their inbox and they live in chat. Utilize those tools to get your word out. It is one of your best channels to start engaging and getting people enrolled in your upskill and reskill initiatives. And I say, don't be these people. I use this slide probably more times than I've used any other slide. And I find it really funny. As you can see here, sales are tanking and these gentlemen are looking at each other and saying, obviously our customers are not trying hard enough. Listen, it's our job to get our learners to engage with us. It's not their job. And I think when we realize that we have to engage with them and we have to bring them to us, and we can't expect them to go and search us out. We can't expect them to do the work to come and find us. It's us that has to change if we want them to change. So try not to assume, again, that when you start developing these new and great things that your internal team likes, that your customers, your learners are going to be as receptive. Go out there, talk to them. You need to change if you want them to change. One size fits none is the next innovative, maybe easy way to upskill and reskill. Listen, I broke this into two different categories, and maybe I'm being too harsh on certain things, so I'm going to give a little caveat at the beginning. So when we look at reskill, um, you know, people who want to be reskilled, um, I don't know if there's a nicer way, a different way to say it, but you are a saving grace for many of these people. You are providing them an economic means to remain gainfully employed by your organization. There is nothing more valuable than that to them. What drives their engagement is content. They are after content. They want the skill. They want to improve their lives. They want to remain employed. They want to keep making money so they can keep buying clothes, food, and shelter for their themselves and their family. So when it comes to reskilling employees, really the content is what drives this. So look at existing contracts. If you already have, maybe, and speaking with one of your managers in, marketing, I don't know, they've spent money on pragmatic, which is a very niche, skill of product marketing. And maybe they already have a contract and they have licenses to take people through an academy. Leverage that contract. Maybe there's some pre-built courses that somebody bought from Udemy. Look into those contracts and see what you already have to see if you can just leverage that existing content. Again, because the person who's getting reskilled, it's mostly the manager of, let's say the manager of marketing in this case, they got Udemy as an example, as a way to improve and upskill their current team. They weren't actually thinking about reskilling. And so they would not know to say, hey, why don't we use Udemy to reskill somebody out of the HR team into marketing? That's where you can come in by breaking down that silo and say, wow, you have access to all of this amazing content that you've already bought. If we take people through this program, you could probably hire from our internal candidates. And I say expensive isn't good. Here, we don't need to create some huge expensive custom built program. This is a skill people want. It's highly desirable. You don't need to invest in the most expensive content to make it engaging. It is engaging as it is. So again, reskill, focus on your content, look to existing contracts, and don't go after something that's super expensive because you think it looks the best and it's the most pretty and it uses AR or VR. It's all about the content. It's making people better at their job. So upskill. Upskill's a little bit of a different take here, because again, these are people who, it's like what is it, like the boiling frog in water kind of thing. Many of us, myself included, have been in this position where the skills that we need are kind of passing us by, and sometimes we don't even recognize it. So you have to focus on that experience, and you do have to spend maybe a little bit more, and making sure that that content is engaging, is maybe a little bit more visually appealing, so it kind of draws them in. I say less is more. The idea, and this is where the one size fits none joke kind of comes into play. I understand the allure of buying, 500 courses from LinkedIn Learning. I do get it, in Open Sesame, who's a great partner of ours. I understand the allure of that because the cost per learner is so small and it gives you access to anything you want. But the reality is, if we were to take a look at the true cost per learner, right, looking at cost per engagement, how much should we spend versus how many courses got completed within what we spent, that is going to tell us a different story. What we would rather do is provide less options that are more relevant to the people. Some really interesting things I've seen here actually from organizations is to roll back this idea of, let us build these, stadiums of content and people will buy tickets to enter them, and more giving the money back to the learner, saying, you need to spend $2,000 on your own learning. Now we have these channels for you. If you want to come and buy content from the learning and development team, here's the cost. So that learning and development is now the state. They are the e-commerce for all of the education. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to only buy from you. If they want to go out and attend Dreamforce in San Francisco, if they're in the sales or marketing or IT team, great, go be it. Let them decide where they're going to vote with their dollars. And there's this big when I was in school, people at that point in time were not spending money on sustainable resources. And it was actually a use case to say, when people surveyed the Americans in this case, and said, would you spend more money on a good that was sustainably resourced and was good, better for the environment than the other good? Would you spend a little bit more money? The answer was obvious. Yes, I would spend more money. I would love to spend more money. But if they took those same people and they gave them fake money, and this was fake money, not even real money. They said, you have 100 of this, monopoly money to go spend. They did not spend it on those sustainable goods. So what people say they want versus where they actually spend their money is vastly different. So when you look at a survey and say, yeah, everybody wants communication courses, everybody wants this, you need to maybe go and talk to the people and look, well, they're saying this, but have they actually done it? Did they vote with their dollars last year? How much content did get consumed in communication? And then the last point there is invest in marketing. I think really marketing is the biggest thing for upskill. Again, like reskill, you don't really need to do as much of the what's in it for me, because once you can tell them this is going to keep you gainfully, it's more of an easier what's in it for me, because you're teaching them a new skill that keeps them employed. But if you're upskilling, you need to understand there's tremendous work that needs to be done on the what's in it for me. So you have to invest in marketing and think like a marketer to draw people in. And that one caveat here, I say focus on content and reskill and not an upskill. So some people think, well, are you saying that content isn't always the end all be all? I really do think it is. But I think sometimes when it comes to upskill, you need to spend more on the front end, the content that actually gets people in that first experience, like when you walk into Disneyland and you're kind of at awe, that first eye-opening experience needs to be invested into heavily, so that you can continue to engage. The lesson is don't buy this shoe. Nobody wants this shoe. We've all bought this shoe. This shoe is 1,000 hours of pre-built content that you plug into your database, but they don't really want that. They want, when they're in the market or when they're cycling, they're going to go get the cycling shoe or the hiking shoe or the running shoe or the climbing shoe. Again, I kind of am over exaggerating the point of pre-built learning and pre-built content. I do think it is relevant. I do think it exists. I do think you should have this as a piece of your strategy. But if you think you can replace all of your content, if you can replace every shoe in your closet, as an example, with this shoe, you're sadly mistaken. Now I put innovations finally, right? This guy's been talking for 30 minutes, and he hasn't talked about technology yet, but yet he started with innovations. That's really weird. Why isn't he doing that? So I do want to talk about technology, because I do think there's some technology that really does make life better when it comes to upskilling and reskilling, and innovative ways to do that. The first one is Cognota. This is a brand. This is a partner of ours. So there's definitely a caveat there. We're not getting paid by them or anything, but I do believe it's a revolutionary tool. It manages the operations for your learning and development team. So when you talk about innovation, right, you look at the same lens that we were doing earlier: better, faster, cheaper. You got to pick one. Cognota is faster for sure, and probably cheaper as well, for that matter, less expensive. It manages your entire operations within your learning and development department. So this innovation doesn't necessarily have anything much to do with the learner, although it does have some learner focus. So it may directly, it's not going to have maybe an enormous impact, but it will align your learning and development team and save you a bit of money and headache and project management and time, and allow you to focus on those projects that really do drive engagement for your learners. This company that was the next company, etu.co, met them at Brandon Hall 2 weeks ago, and I just thought that they had an innovative tool, so I thought I'd mention it as well, because many of us have realized that this learning by doing concept is becoming really, really, really important. We've always known it, but our ability to, I guess, leverage that has been cost prohibitive, right? Learning by doing, how do we simulate that? Well, through simulations, but those have historically been really hard to program, or the tools that are out there that are pre-built are not really that engaging. etu.co has done a really good job of making simulations more obtainable for learning teams. And we do know that that is a way that people want to learn. They want to feel like they're involved in an environment. And today, with the prevalence of video games, AR, VR, and just general screens in front of us, I think the learners are a little bit more tuned to it as well. Chat GPT, I mentioned the example earlier, about the example in marketing. Obviously, this will really revolutionize how we run our business. So much of what we do, content is so important into our daily lives. Now, those that have leveraged Chat GPT know that it's not, by saying it's going to do your job for you is not the case, but it's going to help, and it's going to make your job more efficient. And I think some people look at these tools as, if I buy this, then I don't need an instructional designer, I don't need a content person on my team. That's absolutely not the case. It means that this content person is now going to free up 50% of their time. They're going to be able to do the job 50% faster, which is going to allow them to do a different job that they weren't able to before with that extra time. Absolutely a great tool. Whenever Microsoft buys it, whatever price tag they put on it, it will be worthwhile investment. Absolutely. WalkMe, AppD, etc. These are the electronic performance support systems, EPSS. Essentially, they're applications that live on top of your software and help you and help your learners better understand how to leverage technology. I think these tools are vastly underutilized in this space. When we look at technology as a driver for most of our businesses, and especially recently, this huge expense into technology to help us become more digital after COVID, it is these types of tools that sit on top of your software, that sit on top of your technology, that are going to be one of the biggest drivers of performance in your company. And it really does help, I would say, upskill and even reskill certain positions, because a lot of the technology today that's being created is aimed at a 30-year-old, let's say 30 to 35-year-old person. Now, this leaves vast majority of the people in the workforce still kind of scratching their head saying, well, it may be intuitive for some, but it's not intuitive to me. So when you look at upskilling and reskilling, I think you need to also look at, well, how can I provide an easier way for maybe somebody who doesn't have the skill, the tech skill, to use this application? How can I make it easier for them? And that's a great tool. Communication, I really think learning and development, if you have access to these tools and the culture of your company is allowing for it, we should be using Teams, Slack, email much more than we do today to get the word out. We do not need to be living in a one-to-many world. Again, there is tremendous money we spend on every learner, right? So most of the clients that we're in, granted, are large companies, so they might be spending a little bit more. But what did the latest ATD report? $1,500 or something like that we spend per learner. Is it worth the Teams chat to a learner to say, we're launching this training program, we think it might be relevant to you, go attend? It's worth the cost of that chat to the learner to go out one-to-one. You now have 50% of your time of your day because you didn't have to write the entire learning script. Chat GPT wrote it for you. So what am I going to do? I'm going to use that time to do something that AI can't do, and be personal and say, I recognize that I saw you mention this on this survey. I wanted you to know that this course is available to you. That takes thinking. It takes interpersonal skills. Also, with communication, looking into your your existing departments, going to your IT folks, going to your finance, your operations team and saying, can I take 5 minutes at the start of your next meeting? Let's face it, we're all in meetings to death. We don't need more meetings, but most of us are willing to give away 5 minutes of our time in a meeting, especially if it's something, interesting like a new training program, upskill opportunity, or a reskill opportunity. 5 minutes at the beginning of a message from you to an external team saying, hey, we just launched this program. Anybody who has this skill set, let's chat, click on this link and you can learn more. An amazing tool. Please don't overlook that tool. VR, I put a question mark if that really makes life better. And it has nothing against AR or VR for that matter. There's amazing use cases coming out that I would have never thought of. I was interviewing the CLO recently, and she had mentioned that they used a virtual reality game to remove bias in the hiring process. And I didn't quite believe it until I just started talking and learning a little bit more about that program and the results of that program. And they were honestly quite phenomenal. And I would have never assumed VR would be a great way to teach soft skills. To my mind, what comes to mind for me is fixing an engine or picking something off the shelf or, driving or operating a widget or whatever it is. But there's lots of use cases for VR that work. The reason that I have the question mark is because I feel like sometimes we get caught up in the idea that we want to use VR and maybe our people aren't quite ready yet. That was the big lesson that I learned, and the big takeaway from this chief learning officer that she learned was that not everybody in her team was quite ready for it. When they looked to design a VR program, they actually went with a less complicated program. They originally had considered going after something where you stand up and you walk around, and it was highly immersive. It was like you're an avatar. But they realized that it was actually too much for their people and they wouldn't like it. It would work for maybe a certain crowd, but not for others. So I think it is great. I think the applications are absolutely great, but you need to understand is it part of the bucket that's making my life better and engaging and upskilling and reskilling my team, or is it something I'm doing to try and see if I like it because I wanted to do it? I put here, not technology that makes life better. Some of these things are very simple. I don't necessarily, and I think they're overlooked sometimes, and they're probably overlooked because it's companies like us that are touting them. But for those aren't, the first thing is flexible outsourcing models. This is something that our company has really been. I think probably the biggest reason that we've grown to how big we are today is our flexible outsourcing model, where you're only paying for resources that you use. Now, a lot of companies have already invested. This is nothing new. Companies like Fiverr, Guru, Elance, where you're going out there and you're hiring a freelancer on the web to do a job. We all like that idea, but the reality for most of us is that we either operate in too complex of an environment, too secure of an environment, or we honestly just don't feel that the person that we meet on Fiverr is going to be good enough to do this big old task that I have. Maybe it works for a $5 design of a template, but not for launching a $1 million change management program. So what we have done is we have created that model for companies that if you're looking for that flexibility to pay a company for a job, for a task, for a program, whether that's a $1 million outsourcing engagement or a $100 program, whatever it is, you can do that. And the biggest benefit to you is you only spend what you're using now. And I think for a lot of us who are in a little bit of a interesting spot when it comes to our talent of hiring, it's, can I hire this full-time resource or not? Sometimes the answer is yes, and then tomorrow it's no. Again, look to outsourcing to possibly save you some. Trainer facilitation, I know, has been a really big one, and trying to understand, okay, I have this group of facilitators. Now I know that they're only busy 70% of the time. I can't keep them fully occupied. Would it be less expensive for me to just hire a facilitator on demand whenever I need that facilitation done. Then I'm not wasting any money on downtime, right? That responsibility now falls to Infopro Learning. Again, I'm not trying to make a sales pitch to come to Infopro Learning. I'm just trying to make a pitch to say, look at better ways to spend money when you need the money. Make that spend on demand versus this sunk cost of building out this really big team that you might not necessarily always need. Engagement-based cost models. This is, I've talked to a couple CLOs about this, and there's not a lot of players out there that do this. And depending on the size of your company, you can maybe, force your vendors into this. But talking to people whenever you're paying for content, you're paying for, a lesson or a ILT session or a VILT session, making your vendors work on a, we will pay you when people actually show up and consume this content. We're not going to pay you just to have the content available to be used. We're only going to pay you once it's consumed. So this engagement-based cost model is something I really encourage a lot of you to go to your vendors and start asking for, because there does need to start to, we do need to start to see that change in our industry, where we are understanding the dollars that we spend per the engagement that gets consumed by the, the hours, the learning hours that get consumed. That's what I mean by engagement-based cost models. Developing a culture. Upskilling and reskilling is much easier when you have a culture of learning. It makes the person who's afraid to be reskilled because they feel like it's going to have to admit that maybe they don't know something, or to ask even, is this option available for me? Do you offer something like that? If you have a culture of it, it makes everybody's job a lot easier to upskill and to reskill. They know who you are. They know who the learning and development team is. You have a culture of your own. You have a brand of your own. Developing that culture of learning is tough. Now, I know this gets said a lot, but developing a culture, I feel like in your learning, a culture of learning is kind of like planting a tree. The analogy that you hear sometimes is, when is the best time to plant a tree? Well, 10 years ago. When is the second best time to plant a tree? And that's today. If you didn't plant your tree 10 years ago, and maybe you weren't even in the company 10 years ago, that's okay. But don't wait another 10 years to realize that you should have planted a tree. Start today. Marketing. Marketing is the not technology that makes everybody's life better. Marketers are experts at engaging people. Look at what they're doing and copy it. If you need more engagement, if you need more traction, if you need more visibility to your programs, go talk to your marketers. They love to talk with you. Understand what they're doing. Ask to borrow some of their time, or pay them for their time for that matter, or get somebody with a marketing mind in your team. How about that? How about reskilling somebody in marketing to come into your L&D team? You are now not only providing a new skill for the marketer, but you're also bringing somebody with a completely different mindset into your field. Tremendous green pastures lie in marketing. They understand how people think. They understand engagement. They understand how to get people to find you out and engage with your stuff. And then I have technology that makes life worse. Anything you don't need. Do not buy. I think we should really sit down every 6 months, or maybe even every quarter, and really map out, what do we need? What do we absolutely need to run our business? What do we absolutely need to upskill and reskill? And then write that down, put that on a whiteboard somewhere. Then when a vendor comes to you saying, well, did you know that this huge problem exists and you need to buy this tool to solve this problem, you're able to realize, okay, well, they just created a problem that doesn't exist for me, and they're going to solve a problem that actually wasn't on my board of things that I needed to do. So do not buy technology if you don't need it. If you don't absolutely need it, the chances are you probably shouldn't be getting that. It will make your life harder. Somebody has to own that software. Somebody has to use that software. You're paying for that software. In the upskill and reskill game, it is becoming, much more prevalent as that terminology is becoming more important. You don't absolutely need this type of technology. So the lesson: don't buy another Netflix of learning. you know, for a while there, and you can kind of see when these results were. These are, from a while ago. This term Netflix of learning came up, and it got used so much and so bought into by, you can see, some of the biggest in our space, and people wrote so many articles about it. But at the end of the day, nobody ever wanted to view learning like Netflix. People use Netflix to pass their time, to turn their mind off. They weren't using it to improve their livelihood, to make them more money, to make them better at their job. But it was something that got bought into. It was definitely a trend, and we all needed to go out there and make this learning management system completely different, and buy a learning experience portal, because that was going to change it. But then what we did is we went out and bought these portals, and we bought this Netflix, but we realized now we have the same problem of Netflix. We put out a bunch of Netflix originals that nobody cares to watch. It is about the content. Get better content, don't get a better Netflix. Now, this is the real finally. I'm hoping that many of you were not waiting for the tech slide, and you were actually waiting for the, when is this guy going to talk about ROI again? Because that's what drives our business forward. So now for those folks, here is the final payoff. So what are results, right? We look at cost saving. These are some really easy ones. When we talk about upskilling and reskilling, there's a lot of things we can look at, but let's just look at some of the basics. These are fundamentals that you can get numbers for. Your company would absolutely have numbers for these. What is the cost of hiring and onboarding a new employee? We all will know that. I mean, not as in like we would know that as in any professional would, but we have the number. Companies have this number. They have a rough number. If they don't have the exact number, they would be able to roughly tell you what it is. There is the opportunity cost. Some of us might not have, not every organization has this number, which is the, if I find, if somebody gets laid off, or somebody, isn't right for the job, how much business do we lose between having to let that person go and finding the next person and bringing them up to speed to replace that old person? 6 months to a year is usually what it costs, and actually opportunity costs that's lost. Some companies have it, some companies don't. You can put any number you want there. Salary costs, again, we all have this. This is fairly easy to get. So those are some results. Cost saving, right? If we're upskilling and reskilling, those are all costs that we get back to our company. We didn't have to spend those costs anymore. And then there's the results. Some of the results are a little bit harder, I would say, for us, not monumentally harder. Some training programs are easier than the others. And that's performance, right? Engaged employees. What is that worth to your company? You can be very, very low. You can define what engagement means. Somebody took one learning program throughout the year, and based off of even the most pessimistic figures, an engaged employee is, whatever, 20% better at their job. You can take some numbers. They're performance evaluations. People that took these training programs in the performance evaluations historically have scored 30% higher than those that have not. What does 30% better performance mean to your organization? A lot of money. Culture, super important. There you look at, what is our overall attrition? What are our reviews on Glassdoor, things like that. And then promotion. People that went through the training program, did they get promoted or not? Again, the performance improvement, and then, I mean, I think the obvious one, right, is did we upskill them or reskill them? If we upskilled a customer service agent and their customer reviews or testimonials were 5 stars instead of 4.5 stars. Those are the obvious ones. Those are on the job, but those are very specific to the job. So I'm leaving those out. We're going to try to talk about just the very clear ones here. Let's assume that we have 5 employees who need to be reskilled, just for this very simple example. So a cost of onboarding, right, is going to cost us $20,000. Now, this onboarding, let's assume this is recruitment and onboarding, which is $20,000. Now, this is much, much higher for most every organization on this call, but I wanted you to see, even being very pessimistic, the ROI. Again, you can get these numbers very simple. Reskill cost. This is a simple one. All I'm saying here is whatever program I'm going to invest in this person. So I'm going to spend $5,000 to enroll them in a course that teaches them this new skill. I'm going to take this programmer who knows this language and I'm going to make them into somebody who knows this job, and I'm going to spend $5,000 on them. So those are the numbers that we have. And again, I'm not looking at anything from performance. I'm not looking at opportunity cost. If I start to look at those, and if your company has those, this ROI example will go through the roof. Option one, we do nothing. All the employees leave the company, right? And they're gonna leave because their skills aren't better, whatever it should be, or they want to go somewhere else. Cost of 5 people is $100,000. So we lost $100,000 because we had to go find 5 more people. Option two, we reskill 5 employees, but of the 5, we only were able to keep 2. So here we still have to onboard 3 new people. That's $60,000. And we had to still invest the money in reskilling, so that's $25,000. So a total cost of $85,000. So which one would you prefer? Well, in this example, it saves the company 15% of their annual onboarding costs by reskilling employees instead of letting them go or asking them to go because they don't have the skills. Think of what 15% of your annual onboarding cost is. And again, this is not taking an opportunity cost or anything, or making them better at their job, improve performance, making your culture better, anything. This is just dollars and cents. And you can get this number, 15% of your annual onboarding cost. The lesson is you don't have to be Einstein. None of these numbers are tough. This isn't hard math. This is simple math. You don't have to be Einstein to get to the ROI of upskilling, specifically reskilling. Again, upskill is a bit harder. Still don't have to be Einstein, but some of these are very obvious. You have a cost, you can leverage it. And I'm going to go through this relatively quick because we only have a couple minutes, but in conclusion, 6 points. We have everything we need to start upskilling and reskilling people today, and we're the people to do it. We don't need anything else. We've got it. All we need to do is change the way that we look at our world to understand that we don't just need to be making people a little bit better at their job, but we need to prepare them for new jobs. To identify the skills that matter most. What are those new jobs? What are those jobs you have now? What are they going to be in the future so that you can start preparing your team for that? Segment your learners. Understand which of your people need to be reskilled and upskilled. If somebody needs to be reskilled, do you really need to be spending incremental gains on upskilling them, or should you switch them out to a different role? 4, treat learners differently and spend accordingly. People don't need to be engaged at the same level. Understand who your learner is and spend accordingly. Point 5, lots of room for innovation. Doesn't have to just start with technology. In fact, if you don't look at technology, if you first look at your processes, usually you will find such low-hanging fruit, you'll save so much money that you can go out and buy whatever technology you want. Point 6, the cost of failure is so low, but the success has enormous returns, absolutely enormous returns. So even if you spend all of the money and the whole thing is a failure, you are still going to come out ahead, even if you get one person to succeed. So with that, I've wrapped up in about 2 minutes with just a slide on Infopro learning. I know we had one question so far: how would businesses measure the efficacy and impact of reskilling and upskilling when it comes to hybrid? We talked a little bit more. We talked about that. So hey, thank you for asking the question. You were able to stick around to the end. The foreshadowing paid off. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Again, I wasn't able to review the chat. I will look at that and see if there's anything in there, but please feel free to connect with me. My email ID there was at the very beginning. I can put that in, is here as well for anybody who wants to connect with me. Please feel free to do so. I love talking about this. And thanks for attending, and go keep learning, keep upskilling, keep reskilling yourselves.
Thank you, Nolan. This concludes our webcast today. I would like to thank our presenter as well as all of you for joining us. If you joined late and would like to view the webcast again, the recording and slides will be available on hr.com in our archived webcast page. Your educational credits will appear in your account within 2 business days, and we also send out an email with the credit information. Please take a few moments and fill out the webcast survey that will open on your screen. Your feedback is very important to us. This concludes our webcast. Enjoy the rest of the event.